So when we talk about macroeconomics, a lot of times we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, who cares? My economics professors in graduate school would kind of retort to us that quite a bit. Oh, yes, 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 but who cares, right? What's the point? And so we have to keep in mind what are the goals of macroeconomics just writ large. So what are the goals? Well, the goals are to have what's called economic growth. We all expect, whether or not this is sustainable or not is a completely different story, but we all expect more stuff every year. We expect to live a better life. We expect there to be quality improvements. We expect there to be quantity improvements, right? We expect that things are going to get better in terms of the amount that we can consume, in terms of leisure and goods and services and stuff like that, and the quality of them, right? The second goal that we have is low unemployment. We would like there to be, if you want a job, we would like to be able to provide you with a job, right? In terms of an economic system that allows for people to employ themselves in the area that they have been trained, or employ themselves in the area that they would like to be in, the industry that they like to be in. And our last goal is going to be low inflation, which the Federal Reserve is really struggling with right now in order to keep inflation down. They've done a somewhat decent job of it at this point. They still have more work to do, but are they flirting with a recession or a possible depression if they continue with these policies to try to keep inflation lower? We will see. Stay tuned to find out, right? How do we analyze these macroeconomic problems? Well, we have certain frameworks that we can look at these different problems through, right? The first one that we have is called the aggregate demand and aggregate supply model. This is very similar to the supply and demand model that you all are used to, but we just throw this word aggregate in front of it, right? Where aggregate really just means the sum of all of the things. So instead of looking at the demand curve for, say, lattes in Shadron, we're looking at the demand curve for, lattes for the whole country, right? Or we're looking at, Starbucks's demand curve internationally or something like that, right? That would be a more macroeconomic analysis. The other frameworks that we are going to dig into, which is a big part of the reason why I switched books, is because before, in a lot of the typical books that you all pay a lot of money for, right, and you don't even get to keep because they're a rental, so at least you get to keep this book. But the other thing I like about this book is that instead of teaching you how to be a hammer, and then you guys see everything as nails, right, and you just use the same tool on everything, right? I want to teach you how to be more like a Swiss Army knife, and to learn that there are different policies and different theories that apply to different situations, right? And so some of those other kind of policies, theories, or models we're going to be exploring in our macro section here, which is the Keynesian model, named after the great macroeconomist John Maynard Keynes, and then the neoclassical model, which is the typical model that is taught everywhere. It's taught in high schools, it's taught in, Ivy League, business schools and stuff like that, right? That's the model that's taught. But the Keynesian model is the Keynesian model is just as important, and we'll get to talk about that, which I find pretty exciting. And lastly, how do we actually, achieve these goals, right? What are the policy tools? Because at the end of the day in economics, right, we do a lot of assessment about stuff and we figure stuff out. But again, so what, right? What can we do about it? Is there anything we can do about it? Or are we just, articulating how the boat is sinking, right? Or is there any kind of available option for us to maybe mitigate that or reverse it or to, prevent it from happening again or something like that, right? And so in this class and in macroeconomics writ large, we really have two different policy tools. The first one is monetary policy, and the second one is fiscal policy. Any questions on goals, policies, or frameworks? All right, jumping right in. Yeah, no, please.
The aggregate demand and supply model, that's analyzing the greater macroeconomic scale of things as we have already seen within just the demand and supply curves.
Correct.
And then Keynes was the one who greater government intervention in the economy?
Yes. So the Keynesian model, and so this book does a nice job talking about how these different models apply at different times in terms of, because really ultimately they have to do with our conception of like full employment or our conception of what a healthy economy is. And so when things are going great and we're very close to our natural rate of unemployment and inflation numbers are fine, everybody seems to be a neoclassical, right? Everybody seems to be very laissez-faire, right? Let the market do its thing. Yeah, Adam Smith kind of thing, right? Absolutely. Let's hands off and let the markets correct themselves. But then, whenever we have any kind of systemic risk, we just saw this with the banking crisis, right? And all of a sudden, these people who just a year ago were crying, oh, the overregulation, it's killing our banks. Our banks need to be competitive internationally. And then, they have a bank run, and then they're, and essentially they all changed their tune and said, oh, we need help. Government, will you bail us out? Will you buy us? Will you recapitalize us? Right? So that right there is a great example of people switching from the neoclassical mindset to the Keynesian mindset because of the different macroeconomic conditions that they were facing. And so there's a big joke in economics, which is talking about, after the Great Depression and stuff, like everybody's a Keynesian now, right? And a similar kind of joke emerged in the 2008 financial crisis, right? Like when things really hit the fan, it's universally accepted that the government should step in and prime the pump, and like John Maynard Keynes had this great metaphor. He came in and he toured the United States during the Great Depression, and he was talking to our economic advisors, and he might have even been talking to Roosevelt at the time, the president of the United States, and he said, you would be better off taking treasury notes and putting them in bottles and burying them in old abandoned mines and then telling people about it. Because at least that would be some economic activity. Like people would go and they would do something to find the bottles with the treasury bill notes in them, and then they would spend the money. And it was a hyperbolic point, you know what I mean? Because ultimately that was the drive for creating the interstate highway system, and the drive for creating a lot of the national parks and monuments and stuff like that, right? It was essentially, well, we need to get money out into the economy, and as a government we have the ability to inject money into the economy and get economic activity started, right? Because there's this multiplier effect. So every dollar that the government spends in the economy is going to create $3 of economic output activity. And so in times of stress and trial and stuff like that, everybody becomes a Keynesian and says, yeah, let's have the government prime the pump and push some resources into the economy. And then when things are great, everybody kind of goes to more of a neoclassical model. One of the big issues with the Keynesian model is that it's politically unpalatable to take the punch bowl away, right? It's really easy to put the punch bowl out and to put the buffet out and stuff like that, right? And tell everybody to go ahead and consume and get jobs and everything like that. It's harder to wind things down, right? It's harder to actually decrease government spending when the economy is doing well, and it's really hard, almost impossible given our current political landscape, right? It's really hard, almost impossible to increase taxes, which is part of the Keynesian model, right? Is we lower taxes when we need to, when we're in recessions and depressions and stuff like that, to stimulate economic activity. And then in order the other side of that balance sheet, so that our national debt just doesn't run amok, which it has, is we are supposed to increase taxes as the economic times start to recover and as we start to do better as a country, right? But again, politically unpalatable, damn near unfeasible given the current gridlock and given the current just state of our national politic debating mechanism. So good question.
Sorry, I have a second question.
Yeah, what's up?
So if the neoclassical model was Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market, everything will sort itself out by self-interest. How does that differ from the demand and supply model? Isn't demand and supply the method by which neoclassical argue that everything sorts itself out?
Yes, yeah. So maybe it should be like a sub point or something like that. Yeah, within the aggregate demand supply model, we'll talk about the Keynesian and neoclassical dynamics. Yeah, good question.